This is the Transformers Generations Studio Series 86, number 3, figure number 3 from Transformers the movie, 1986 movie. This is Studio Series Deluxe Class Blurr. Wow, one of my favorite characters actually in the movie. I picked up this figure from Hobby Corner. I'm a little skeptic about this figure, not very high expectations. I have a few theories on what this figure is, but we'll have to wait and see. Let's open him up. And here is Blurr out of packaging, and the figure, in terms of aesthetics and actual accuracy to how he looked in the cartoons and movie, I think it's pretty good. I love the colors. The colors are so accurate. The light blue, the navy blue, and the white contrast. I think it's great. And even down to the sculpt of the legs, the whole aesthetic and silhouette of the body, and particularly that head sculpt, I think Hasbro nailed it in terms of the aesthetics for this figure. The figure does come with a diorama. This is the scene in Autobot City when the Decepticons attack Metroplex and the Autobots are caught off guard and a battle ensues, and we all know how that turned out. Let's look at the details of this figure. You can clearly see all the vibrant colors are present. That is the colors of Blurr. Let's talk about the head sculpt. I love this head sculpt. If at all, this is what's going for this figure. The fantastic head sculpt, as well as the colors. Head sculpt even has beautiful light piping. And this is as good as it gets, folks. The gun, the blaster, I think it's great. I think it's so spot on. Blurr's rifle that he uses when he's shooting at the Decepticons when they're attacking Autobot City, like Decepticons are attacking, Decepticons are attacking, Decepticons. I mean, that was pretty cool. He also comes with this welding tool. This was a surprise for me. It does fit in all the way through. I just don't want to do it because it's a pain to just remove it. It feels like he's filling up the gas tank of fellow Autobots. But it is a welding tool, which we've seen on the planet Junkion. Okay. He does have a ton of kibble. You can clearly see on the back, this thing, it compresses neatly, but I feel it's too big. And there could have been a better way to fold it and compress it even more. But you know, it's okay. The biggest gripe I have with this figure in terms of the kibble is really these. Now, arguably, this is part of the aesthetic. If you look at the cartoon, there's this bit sticking out behind his elbows. That's a given. But it's not this big. It's a little smaller. You know, it comes up to this. Like, this should have been the size of the this front part of the vehicle, the fender, I suppose. It should be just up to here. And I wish there was a way they could have done this better. They could have hollowed this out. They could have allowed this to compress and fold up this way, and they could have formed part of the forearm. There was an easier way to do this, and I think, I don't know, was it a lack of budget, or they were just too lazy to do it? There easily could have been a better way to do this. Okay. The figure does have some articulation, some interesting new types of articulation. Head is on a ball joint. There's a waist swivel, a little bit loose on my copy. The shoulders, because of transformation, they have this hinge right here that's supposed to lock in place. And the swivel joint is attached here. And then the hinge joint for the in and out motion of the arms is attached here. So it feels weird. The shoulder articulation, I mean, it does what it needs to do on at least a minimum, but it just feels a little awkward for me. The elbows, they swivel like this, and bent wrists are on a swivel because of transformation. The hips can go in and out, forward and backward, but interestingly enough, the thigh swivel, it's very loose on my copy. I don't know why, but it swivels right here, but this part of the hip is attached to the thigh. So I'm surprised that they did not just cut it right here and then molded this part onto the hip, because you can't, it's fine, you can articulate the leg forward, backward, in and out, but when you've bent it forward like this, you can't rotate that thigh, which is, I think, necessary for a lot of dynamic poses. You can do it this way, but you don't get that straddle stance that you would normally get from most figures had they did not include that hip piece as part of the thigh. So this was annoying, extremely annoying for me. Legs, the knees are on a hinge joint. It's a little loose again on my copy. If at all, what's going for the articulation of the legs for this figure are the feet. The feet have this rocker tilt, which is staple for most generation figures now in the War for Cybertron trilogy. And let's face it, this is a War for Cybertron trilogy figure, ideally. And you can move the toes up and down, as well as the sole of the foot like this, and that will allow for some stable poses, which is cool. I like that. I like that bit, and it is mainly due to transformation, but you can get him into a lot of dynamic poses because of those heel articulation. But sadly, this thing is a nuisance, and as well as this one is pretty awkward. So yeah, it just feels so fiddly. I don't know. I guess most Studio Series figures are like that. Had this been part of the Earthrise or Kingdom line, I don't know. Could it have been better? I doubt it. And for some size comparisons, here is Blurr with the Titans Return Blurr. I don't have my Takara Tomy Legends Blurr anymore. This is what I have. Interestingly enough, they are almost the same size. In fact, he's a little bit taller because of his crest on top of his head, which I was surprised, because you know the trend that Hasbro's adopting right now is they're shrinking their figures. But for a deluxe class figure, current one, to be in almost the same size as a figure from an older trilogy, wow, that is amazing. Now aesthetically, obviously he is the better figure in terms of aesthetics, color-wise, accuracy to the cartoon, definitely aesthetics. He beats this figure. And now for the dreaded transformation. I haven't spoken a lot about transformation, and you'll find out now why I haven't, because transformation was a bit of a chore for me, and it was not at all pleasant and enjoyable. I will show you. Okay, put away the weapons. The first thing you want to do is you want to fold up this back part right here and cover his head, and they have those they're very thin tabs. You're going to tab in right there. At this point, I guess you can just go ahead and rotate this one right here so it locks in place, and so it's out of the way. Okay, and then what you want to do is you want to use your fingernails and then pull out the backrest of the seat. That'll form the cockpit, so to speak. Okay, then what you want to do is you want to do the arms. These, you can just go ahead and do that. The instructions have a 3 to 5 steps of how to transform. They're lifting this up, going like this, and then closing it up, and then I mean, you just do this. Okay, it's very easy, very simple. Okay, and then let's do the legs. The legs again. These are the arms and the legs. When you combine them all together, that's where the problem comes. So I'll try and do my best so it doesn't become as frustrating as when I did it in practice. So fold out these panels right here. This crest is going to fold out like that. This is going to fold like this and like this. You can clearly see where this is headed. This thing ratchets the shoulders. They ratchet the arms this way. You already see where this thing is going. Very similar to how Titans Return transformed. And they've got tons of pegs of doom right here. Yeah, it starts with this one. I don't honestly know how to peg it correctly, but the instructions just tell you to just jam it in like that. And it is just a pain to do so because it is such a flared peg. It feels like the best way to do it, in my opinion, if I don't break it, is you have to slide it over this part right here. Try your best to slide it over like that, and that way you can combine it. But the instructions just tell you to just jam the whole thing, and it was not enjoyable. okay, doing so. And then you fold this right here, okay, and then hold on, the arms, before you completely tab them all the way there are these panels, these horseshoe panels right here. You lift them up like that, and then they slide in right here, and then you see those slots right there. Those are for these tabs, okay? Now, how you're going to do that, that's the challenge right here. So you kind of just have to align and just scoop them over right like that. And then at the same time, you're going to want to go ahead and tab these rear ends right here on these tabs right there on the knees. And yep, very frustrating to do so. And then right here, clearly see, you can tab them in just like that. Oh, okay, and then these bits, okay, they're supposed to fold back right here, and these tabs right there are for those slots right there. And then these tabs, again, the very flared pegs are for here, which the instructions just tell you, again, jam them in, jam this peg right here and right there. And yeah, you could do that, but I think you could do it a little bit more finesse and just slide these over those flared pegs like that. Okay. And then, okay, I get it. These hinges right here are supposed to slot in right there. Okay. And every time you try and transform, it feels like you're going to break the pegs. Luckily, the pegs are thick enough, and I think they will withstand the test of time. That is, if you don't expose it to sunlight, moisture, and all the elements and all that. You keep it in a bin. And it can be frustrating, to be quite honest. And this is his alt mode. This is his official alt mode, the hover car, which the front part, it does its job. I mean, it's great. But the rear end, this part right here should have been more conical, should have been more like a complete thrusters right like that. There was no way of doing that. I don't know, unless they could have remolded this, and that would have made the shoulders too big, or they would have had an extra piece to do that. I'm sure third-party companies are going to do that. This should have been a little bit more streamlined. Blurr was a really flat hover car, and this back part is just way too snub, and it's way too cut off, and it just chops the silhouette of the car. I love the fact that the feet are exposed enough so that it allows you to create that illusion that he is hovering. That's great. That's, I think, what the best part of this hover car alt mode. It feels like it's hovering, and combined with the fact that he's got a very streamlined nose cone and fender, at some angles it looks amazing, but when you go to the end, yeah, it's a minor complaint. But I think, given the fact that it is a studio series figure, a more premium figure, despite being really part of the Generations line, I think they could have done much more, considering they charge higher for these figures. Now the gun, you can slot it in right here, and the welding tool will tab in right here. And again, even with the gun, it looks very streamlined, very nice. Yeah, pretty cool. And you can see the combination of all those blues. They really evoke Blurr from the cartoons and that '86 movie. And for a bit of comparison, in alt mode, here is Studio Series '86 Blurr with the Titan's Return Blurr. You can clearly see how similar the design is, even the transformation. It's been a while since I've transformed this figure. Now that I've transformed him, this transformation is so similar that I really don't understand why they couldn't have just modified the transformation of this one by a little bit, because this one just was a lot of fun to transform. This one was... It feels like once you've got him in one mode, you don't want to go back to the other mode unless you have to. This one, you can easily go back and forth, and it's a lot of fun. You look at the design, this one is a lot more streamlined at the back, while this one just abruptly cuts it off. Should have been a little bit longer. like this one. But this one, the nose cone, the front part of the car is, well, this one's a lot better, definitely more accurate. I do like this one. Look, it even has that effect that it's floating, and it has wheels. This one is just floating, no wheels. So yeah, don't be in a rush to sell off your Titans Return Blurr or Legends, Takara Tomy Legends Blurr, because it's still a good figure. And it's a lot more fun compared to this one. And so some final thoughts on the Studio Series 86 Blurr. I think it's okay. It's a decent enough figure, and he can represent Blurr on your shelf. Aesthetics are great. The colors are great. Head sculpt is fantastic. But in terms of playability as a Transformers toy, I think the Titans Return Blurr, especially the Takara Tomy version, the Legends Blurr, I think that's still the better toy. If you're just planning on displaying your Blurr figure and not really play around or play with it, which I can't imagine why, you just want to display it and leave it on your shelf, then this is the way to go. But if you want a cool, playable Blurr toy that still evokes a lot of the G1 Blurr, I think the Legends Takara Tomy Titans Return Blurr is the way to go. It's really a matter of preference. A lot of people, I've seen a lot of people posting now on Facebook and on eBay selling their Takara Tomy Legends Blurr. Everybody's getting rid of that figure because of this figure. They know they're anticipating this figure, and to be quite honest, I think that figure is still worth keeping. If you don't have it and you have this is not a bad figure. It's toy accurate, may not be cartoon accurate, but playability, I thought this was pretty much the more playable toy and less frustrating than this one. The figure does its job for aesthetics and sculpt and colors and everything, all about the look and feel of Blurr. Transformation was a big pain for me. I was very disappointed with it. The flimsiness of the joints, the kibble that were not properly addressed, really puts a downer on this figure. And with that, I am going to give this figure a 7 out of 10. If you can wait for clearance, wait for clearance. This is not worth the exorbitant prices it's going for on eBay, and maybe not even full retail price. If you can get it at a 10%, 20% discount off of retail, then okay. But I wouldn't recommend paying full price for this figure right now, especially if you still have your Legends Blurr. So there you go, folks. I hope you've enjoyed my video review of the Studio Series 86 Deluxe Class Blurr. Let me know in the comment section what you think of this figure. Hit that notification bell so you never miss out on any of my latest video reviews. If it's your first time here, please subscribe. And if you want to help the channel out, please check out my Patreon account. There's a link in the description box below. Thanks for watching.